We've been discussing Black Lives Matter and the movement's demand for accountability for deaths at the hands of police. On the campaign trail, the first candidate Black Lives Matter decided to hold publicly accountable was Bernie Sanders. It started back in July when activists interrupted a town hall with Senator Sanders at Netroots Nation conference in Phoenix. A month later in Seattle, Senator Sanders was interrupted again by Black Lives Matter protesters. And if Bernie Sanders at first just seemed frustrated by the interruptions, pretty soon we saw him undertaking a genuinely substantive response to the movement's demands. The senator now regularly incorporates issues of racial and criminal justice into his public speeches and interviews. He's released a racial justice plan, and he's hired a young African-American criminal justice advocate as his national press secretary. Bernie Sanders' embrace of Black Lives Matter has made the movement even more visible as a Democratic primary campaign issue. And it may have also pressured Hillary Clinton into having a couple of meetings with Black Lives Matter activists earlier this year. Last month, Nina Turner, a former Ohio state senator from Cleveland, who was both a Clinton supporter and a prominent voice on the police killing of 12-year-old Tamir Rice, surprised many by endorsing Bernie Sanders instead of Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton still enjoys a substantial lead in the polls with African-American voters. But as 2016 voting begins in a matter of weeks, can Senator Sanders offer a meaningful alternative to black voters? Joining us now for the interview is Democratic candidate for president and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. He joins us live from Las Vegas, where he is just about to hold a rally. Senator, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
So I want to ask you first, obviously, about today's decision out of Ohio not to indict the officers involved with the shooting death of Tamir Rice. Do you have a reaction to that?
Well, I do. I haven't. I've been on the road all day here in Nevada. I haven't studied the issue, but obviously it's disconcerting to see a 12-year-old shot because he had a toy gun is obviously something that all of us are concerned about. I think we need to have a federal investigation to take a hard look at that. But I will also tell you that we need nationally to take a hard look at the use of force. You know, I was a mayor for 8 years, and I worked very closely with police officers. They have an impossibly difficult job. But I think as a nation, what we have got to recognize is that lethal force should be the last response, not the first response. And we're seeing too much of shooting, I think, in this country.
So, Senator, obviously, as I was introducing you, I pointed out that you were among the very first candidates to be held accountable by the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think one of the first candidates here to really offer a substantive platform. When you are often making the case to African-American voters, you will discuss your experiences with the civil rights movement, a movement which many of these young activists were born a good decade, sometimes even 2 decades later. How do you think that is received by this new generation?
Well, look, you know, what I did 20, 30 or 40 years ago is interesting, but it's not important. What is important is what I'm fighting for today and what I'm advocating. And we're advocating on 2 separate levels. Number one, economically, we are seeing a middle class and African Americans disproportionately suffering in the economy today. We're seeing almost all new income and wealth going to the top 1%. We're seeing African American young people, high school graduates, having a 51% rate of unemployment or underemployment, which should give us a clue as to why we end up having more people in jail than any other country. So what I've been saying loudly and clearly, we have got to invest in jobs and education, not more jails, not more incarceration. We are talking about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, creating 13 million jobs by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, pay equity for women workers, a national health care program guaranteeing health care to all people, having the United States join the rest of the industrialized world in guaranteeing paid family and medical leave. So, Melissa, I think all of those issues resonate with working people all over this country, I think disproportionately, to be honest with you, with an African-American community which is really hurting economically.
When you were talking about the community that would be impacted, for example, by a $15 an hour minimum wage, you got into a bit of a dust-up with Mr. Trump this week when you suggested that some of the folks who are supporting him might actually be more naturally your constituency because you had a response to their economic concerns, which, in your language, generated these kinds of fears that Mr. Trump has been able to, again, in your language, take advantage of. Tell me about that overlapping constituency between you and Mr. Trump.
Look, here's what's going on. There is enormous anxiety within the middle class of this country. People are working for longer hours for lower wages. Older people have sometimes nothing in the bank to retire on. Young people cannot afford to go to college. We have enormous problems, not to mention, what we saw in San Bernardino and the fears about terrorism. So people are anxious, they're nervous, they're fearful. What Trump is doing is saying, okay, I have the solution. We should hate Latinos, we should hate Muslims, vote for me. Meanwhile, what Trump is also telling the American people is that we should not raise the minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour. What Trump is telling the American people is that low wages are good. That's good for America. What he is telling the American people is he wants to see hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks for the top 0.2%. And that's the word we have got to get out to working class people who are inclined to support Trump. It's old-fashioned trickle-down economics. The rich will get richer under Trump's ideas, and the middle class will continue to decline. We have an agenda that speaks to the real needs of working families, how we can rebuild the middle class, how we can demand that the wealthy stop paying their fair share of taxes. So that's the appeal that we're making to some of Trump's supporters.
You mentioned the San Bernardino shootings and the obvious tragedy there. Certainly one important way to analyze that is through the lens of terrorism. Another way that we could think about that has to do with the accessibility of guns in this country. And you have a bit of a mixed record on this. Can you tell me how you will address this question in 2016?
Well, I don't think I have a mixed record. I come from a state that has virtually no gun control at all. I probably lost an election back in 1988 because I was the only candidate running who said that maybe the idea of selling assault weapons might not be a good idea. I have voted to strengthen and improve the instant background check, voted against to deal with the gun show loopholes. I believe we have to deal with the straw man situation in which people are legally buying guns and selling them to criminals. So I think my record on this is very strong, and I think that coming from a state that has no gun control, I think that we can put together a consensus, not 100% of the people, but I think we have a strong majority of the American people who are saying loudly and clearly, we've got to do everything that we can to make sure that guns do not fall into the hands of people who should not have guns, people who have criminal records, people who have mental illnesses. And I think there is a broad consensus to support that effort, and that's an effort I look forward to leading.
We talked about a couple of different constituencies for you. I got to say, one that has proven to be quite strong for you is millennials, and particularly millennials of color. I mean, hip-hop is like completely down with you. You appear on World Star Hip-Hop more often than the Kardashians. What do you think is so interesting about you for the kind of hip-hop generation?
Well, you're having me compete with the Kardashians. That's tough competition there. And if we're holding our own with the Kardashians, I guess we're doing pretty good. Look, I think for two reasons. Millions of young people understand that everything being equal, unless we get our act together, unless we take on the billionaire class, their generation will, for the first time in the modern history of America, have a lower standard of living than their parents. They understand that. They understand that college is increasingly unaffordable and that many of them are leaving school deeply, deeply in debt. For what? For the crime of trying to get a higher education and make it into the middle class. They understand that we are the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people as a right. They are concerned deeply about climate change and the need to transform our energy system. So I think that the ideas, the programs that we're bringing out are resonating with young people from their own economic self-interest as well as their idealism. They want to see this country do all of the things that they know that we can accomplish.
Senator
and that's what, yeah.
I was just going to say, you've identified many existing problems and inequities, particularly facing young people of color. Would a Sanders presidency and administration be better for young black America than an Obama presidency and administration has been?
Well, Barack Obama is a friend of mine, and I work with him on many, many issues. I've supported his election and his re-election. I think, what a Sanders administration would do is make it very clear that in this great country, the billionaire class cannot have it all, that it is absolutely insane that the top 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%, that 58% of all new income is going to the top 1%. That is not an economy that works for anybody except the billionaire class. It is especially not working for the African American community, where unemployment is much higher than the general population. So we are going to put people to work in meaningful jobs. We're going to provide free tuition at public colleges and universities. We're going to fight for health care for all people. And I think that's an agenda that will work for young African Americans, but in fact, it works for our entire society. I've got a couple of thousand people waiting for me, Melissa, so I'm going to apologize, but I think we've got to get going.
Yep, Democratic presidential candidate, Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you very much. There's much more ahead tonight. Please stay with us.